Let's open our Bibles this morning to Mark chapter 4 again, and the 14th verse. The sower soweth the word. And remember, there are two types of sowing, and this word in the Greek means to scatter once again. Not plant, but to scatter. Planting is something you do specifically for a specific purpose. You know the specific ground, you know the specific seed. Farmer does not throw all of his seeds together, reach in to grab a handful, and plants, just scatters it, and let's see if anything grows, and let's see what will grow. What a fun party that would be for farmers. I don't know if any of them do that on maybe a small patch of ground. Probably not, because to them it's business and it's work. So last week we looked at ourselves as being the seed, as the sower sows. This week we want to look at being the ground on which the seed, that is, the word, is being scattered. Not planted, but scattered. Now, salvation is not the only seed that's scattered. That is the first seed that is scattered. You cannot preach prosperity and have anything grow without the crop of salvation. Having said that, I have led a lot of people to the Lord because they received healing. But that had nothing to do with their seed and their crop. That had to do with my seed and my crop. I've had folks that wanted to get saved because they found out how God was good in the areas of finance. That's legitimate. In other words, if you want a great crop of wheat, then first we're giving away free soybean seed. Then we're going to give you wheat seed. Okay, I'll take some soybeans first. The entire word concerning everything, spiritually, mentally, socially, physically, and financially, can either be seed scattered or seed planted. Seed scattered and seed planted. Now, whether it's scattered or planted depends on the ground. Now, when we hear the word being taught or preached, each person must decide if that word is going to be seed scattered or seed planted. Let's say I'm going to scatter the seed. Well, if you pay attention, I've scattered some seed. But if you really, really listen and allow that seed to get down in you, all of a sudden it becomes seed planted. Seed scattered doesn't produce a harvest. Seed planted does. But if you scatter enough seed, something is going to get down in there. Which is the reason why there's a million preachers out there. Because you'll listen to one. Maybe you'll listen to two. Maybe to 10. And these are they by the wayside, where the word is sown. But when they have heard, Satan cometh immediately and taketh away the word that was sown in their hearts. Well, we've talked a lot about that in the past. You've heard that talked about in the past. But the bottom line is simply this. Satan can't take anything from you that you are unwilling to give up. See, he steals, but he does not rob. Well, I've been robbed. You allowed him to rob you. We've often heard that, well, that's Satan. He robbed me of my healing. No, he stole your healing. Because why? You weren't watching after it. You left your door unlocked. He can't rob. He steals. If you won't let him steal, he can't take. And that's a big difference. And we ought to have to meditate on that a little bit and really see how much are we letting him steal that we thought that somehow he was robbing us. The question becomes, everyone has to take their own inventory. What isn't worth enough for you to fight for it? Because he steals, but are you going to fight to keep him out? See? So you have to decide. Either he stole it because you didn't know better, or he stole it because you weren't willing to keep it. And these are they likewise which are sown on stony ground, who when they have heard the word immediately receive it with gladness. But they have no root in themselves, and so endure but for a time. Afterward, when affliction or persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they are offended. I tell you what, that lousy affliction and persecution, and it arose for the word's sake, and they were offended. Well, don't make the mistake of believing that this is talking about how much that you believe in God, or how much that you believe that God will help you. Well, I really believe the word, so it's not talking about me. It's not talking about how much you believe the word. And it's not talking about how much you believe in God or love God. What's it talking about? Well, it told us here. They have no root in themselves. The person is just hearing the word, whatever it's concerning. So he hasn't had any time to believe much of anything about it. I'm believing my faith in my finances. Wait a minute. That's not where you start. I believe that Jesus has saved me. Well, good. I'm glad. Where did that start? By making Jesus my Lord. And how did that happen? One of the worst things that I've ever heard, and I've heard it from many people as they get older, their 70s and 80s and beyond. Not all of them, but some that have been Christians. They've been nominal Christians, but they've been saved and born again all their lives. And they said, and I've been with them one-on-one, because they'd never say this in front of a group. And they've said, Pete, what should I do? As I get older, I don't know if I'm really saved or not. I don't know if I'm going to go to heaven. Well, have you ever made Jesus your Lord? I'd say. Yes. Well, then you're saved. But how do I know? Do you know what that is? They have no root in themselves. And so they endure, but for a time. And then affliction and persecution comes in. What happens? I just don't know if I'm saved, for example. Could be everything. So, he's had that word scattered. He's acted on it. And he hasn't had much time to believe anything yet, is what this is talking about. The same thing can happen to established Christians that are hearing something that is new to them. You ever hear something that's new to you? Almost every week, maybe? All right? And it's new to you, and you have to decide. First of all, is it accurate? But there's more to it, even if you decide, is it accurate? They have no root in themselves. This is talking about the person who doesn't have or refuses to develop the confidence in themselves. This is self-confidence this is talking about here. They have no root in themselves. They don't have the confidence in themselves that maybe this word is true. Or what? Or maybe what they're being taught is accurate. Well, Lord, if it's accurate, show me a sign. What kind of sign would you like? Would you like me to come over and hit you over the head with something? Here's your sign. See? What else? Well, they don't know if it's being taught as accurate, especially if it goes against what they already know. And they don't have the confidence that it'll work for them if they put it to work. So therefore, they don't act on it. They wait for God to do something about it. God's not going to do anything about it. The seed is there. You have to act on it. We have to act on it. What kind of ground are we going to be? And Christians that are always stressing about how unworthy they are. Oh, we're so unworthy. Well, we're not worthy. We're not worthy. We're so unworthy. They're very susceptible to this. Let go and let God. Well, now wait a minute. God can't do it without you in your life. You can't do it without God. Now, since God can't do it in your life without you, does that make God unworthy? Well, then, if you can't do it in your life without God, why would that make you unworthy? They always talk about how unworthy you are. They start out believing. You ever notice that the Christian, he first starts hearing about healing and the word of faith, gets saved. There's Christians that get saved because they're afraid of going to hell. There's some that get saved because they hear about how good God is. And they believe that all things are possible. But then they start ending up believing that all things are possible, just not for me. Say, Satan comes against you that way. How come? Because if he can get rid or keep you from developing root in yourself, then what's going to happen? Well, you received it with gladness, but you only endure for a time. And then when things don't go your way or things start attacking you, affliction or persecution, it arises out of the word's sake. Immediately you're offended. What are you offended with? Folks don't get offended with the affliction or persecution. They get offended with God because why is God allowing this to happen? Or why doesn't God deal with this for me? Why isn't God doing anything in my life? I've been sowing and I've been giving and I've been doing all these things. How come I'm not getting what I want? What are you doing? I sat there and used it Thursday in this context if you watched Faith Walk. If you didn't, it might have been a little hard to find. If you're looking for a job, you're believing God for a job and you're sowing for a job and everything like that. Well, first of all, what kind of job are you sowing for? Are you qualified to do it? If you're not qualified to do it, God can't do it. That would be deceptive. Second of all, can you get to the job? Well, I want to work from home. We're not interested in what you want. What you want is the good job. Well, I want to work from home. It could come to that, but you never start at the top. This is the problem with Christians. They all want to start at the top. I don't know. I've never been able to start at the top. I had to start at the bottom. I'm still working my way up, so to speak. But it doesn't matter what it was. And God can promote you very quickly. I was the guinea pig for Terry when he sold my house. He did a good job. He's better now. Right? You see? I've had jobs where I started low. I remember back when I was 19 for Goodrow Ford. I took a job that I believed was beneath me because I'm 19 and I am smarter than anyone else alive. And I was a parts driver for a dealership to go back and forth 2 blocks between the main building and parts department and the heavy line and new car get ready shop. 2 blocks away. It's now a Dave and Buster's where that was, down there off of Colorado Boulevard near Evans. And Goodrow Ford is, I don't know what it is now, it was Evans and Colorado Boulevard. 2 blocks. I could take any car on the lot. It was 1977. So that was the new car era of Granadas and the Mustang II, all the baloney stuff. So I drove Mustang IIs and Granadas and T-Birds and Rancheros to get parts. It was beneath me. But I did the job. 6 months later, I was promoted to the heavy line service manager position. I didn't know anything much about cars, but I knew how to manage. And my boss, who was always absent, hated me, but I covered for him every time. And the big boss saw through it and acted in that way. But I wasn't too smart. And 6 months later, I demanded a raise, or else I'll quit. So they said, quit! And I did. Because once you give an ultimatum, if you back down, you'll always back down. So it's best not to give ultimatums. And if you give ultimatums to God, but if you're going to believe God for a job and you're going to sow and everything, God will do everything He can. But you have to start where you're at. So you want to get qualified if you're not qualified to do the entire job. Well, I'll learn as I go. God cannot give you that kind of job. Well, I want to work from home. I don't want to have to drive. Probably that's going to limit things. Well, I want this amount of money. See, all these things are a law of progression. Start at the bottom, work your way up. For that, it works that way in everything. Nobody starts off on top, including God's people. And these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the lusts of other things entering in. Well, it chokes the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Now, we've heard Terry's preached it. I've preached it for decades. All of our good teachers and preachers we listen to have preached it one time or another. But this year, between strife concerning COVID and politics this last year, we've really had a chance to find out how that one works. We've politicized COVID, where if you wear a mask, you're either in fear or you're socialist. And if you don't wear a mask, somehow that makes you more godly. It makes you less godly because you're testing God. Fear is lust. It says the lust of other things. Fear is lust. It leaves God completely out of it. God always is left out of lust. God is always left out of fear. However, presumption, I'm in faith, I'm not in fear. Well, let's find out. Presumption is making yourself your own God, since you once again got off God's word. So what's passing these days for faith a lot of times is nothing but presumption. It's how I believe the word. Well, do you believe the word the way the word says it? Or do you believe the word the way God says it? It's a big difference. And if you believe the word the way God says it 5 years ago, has that gotten a little kind of off a little bit over the last 5 years? Because I haven't been watching after it. And I'm allowing Satan to rob me. Mm. I like Keith Moore. I listened to him the other day. And Keith Moore says the biggest thing about tithing is it's acknowledging that God is your God. That's the biggest point of tithing, that God is your God. Some people say, well, I don't tithe off the money before taxes. I tithe off the money after taxes because, after all, I never see that money. Well, you've just acknowledged the government higher than God. The government is your God. And even though you believe that God is your God, you've just cut by a third the benefits of the tither. Well, I don't believe that. I don't see it that way. Yeah, I know. You're the first one who's ever seen it differently. Didn't change anything. Didn't make it right. And God's not going to go along with you, because now I don't see it that way as presumption, which is making yourself your own God, because you're off the word. Now here's what happens when you keep your focus on the things of God and not let the other things distract you. Your intent, here's your intent. When we read Mark chapter 4, do we read it with an intent? What are we intending to get out of this? Well, we're intending to get 30, 60, or 100-fold. That's not what your intent is supposed to be. You know, people become so goal-oriented, and that's kind of a world's deception to make you so goal-oriented. It's great to have goals, but when it comes to the things of God, it's what you do along the way that allows you to achieve. And this is a big point. What are your goals concerning the Word? Terry, what are your goals concerning the Word? And he does not answer because he sniffs a setup. Guess what? You should not have any goals concerning the Word. Your intent should be that you should be good ground. That is your intention, to be good ground. Because when you become good ground, such as hear the word and receive it and bring forth fruit, some 30, some 60, and some 100-fold, then that would go beyond any goals that you would have concerning the things of God. Now, you remember in that scripture that says he's able to do exceedingly above all that we can ask or think, according to the power that works within us? Well, how's that going to work? If you've got goals, my goal is to go higher and exceedingly higher than what I can even think or ask. Is that a realistic goal? Because don't you have to have knowledge of what the goal achieves before it can actually be a goal? If I ask Jason, playing laser tag, what his goal is, my guess is two things: to have fun and to win. He's shaking his head, yes. Destroy everyone. He has defined goals. But when you come to the scripture that God is able to cause you to prosper exceedingly above all that you can ask or think, according to the power that works within us, then all of a sudden Christians' goals that look at that on the surface only, their goal is to prosper exceedingly above all that we can ask or think. And secondly, and it's further down, according to the power that works in me. None of those are goals. God didn't tell you to do anything. There. But if you are good ground, well, I want to be 100-fold return ground. That's not... Okay. It means you have to be good ground. Get off the numbers game. Get on God's game, which is being good ground. When you are good ground, what do you think happens after you have the 100-fold return? Then he's able to make exceedingly things come to you and happen to you and prosper you above what you can ask or think. Well, we have the 100-fold. I believe I have the 100-fold, but I believe that he'll give me more than I can ask or think. Well, which is it? You just became double-minded. And a double-minded man is unstable, not just in that thing, but in all the things. It's a fine point that will trip us up and cause Satan to be able to get in there and steal. Because why aren't I getting the 100-fold? Well, because you said you wanted above all that you can ask or think, according to the power that's working in me. Well, I think there's a lot of power working in me. Well, that's good. But that's not something that you and I can gauge, and we should not try to gauge it. Because why? We're trying to use that to measure how close we are to the goal. Our intent is to be good ground. So these are they which are sown on good ground. The Greek word here for sown means seed received. So if we're good ground, then we have received seed. Is ground good without any seed in it? There's no way to determine it. Well, this is a good, fine soil. Look at all the earthworms and everything. This would grow lots. This would grow. This would grow? Well, then why aren't you sowing some seed in it? If you don't sow seed, nothing can grow. You get no harvest. I'll tell you what, that ministry is good ground to sow my seed in. Are you sowing seed? Oh, yeah, I wish I could, brother, but you know. Then no harvest? But yeah, but I love God and I know that's good ground. No seed, no harvest. So good ground is seed received. Now, receive, Greek, this word here, there's several different words for receive here in the Greek. And that would be to receive, seed received, and receive here in the Greek means to receive or admit with approval. So, seed received or admitted with approval. Well, you know, I tithe because God said you have to, but I really don't like doing it. You're not sowing any seed. Because why? You're doing it, but not with your approval. Well, I do it for God. The only reason I tithe is because God said to. Well, then you're not going to receive the 100-fold return or 60 or 30. You won't walk in the full measure of the benefits of the tither. Why? Because you're doing it because God told you to do it. Well, now, if I remember my Bible correctly, and I think I pretty much do, if you're willing and obedient is what makes you eat the good of the land. Well, how in the world would you eat the good of the land if the seed isn't growing? Willing and obedient, not just obedient, willing and obedient. To receive or admit with approval. Well, what do I have to do if I just found out that, well, now all of a sudden I got to get in there with God and sit there and say, Lord, I need to learn how and show how I'm not just tithing because I have to. I enjoy it. I look forward to it. I enjoy it. I look forward to it. There's a joy. And then here comes another $100,000 a year, and your tithe just went up 10 grand minimum. Now, let's take a side step over here to offerings. Because there's lots of folks that tithe, but they don't give any offerings. You know why? Because they're doing just what's required. Therefore, what does that tell me? It tells me that they're doing it out of obedience, not out of willingness. You can't expect God, the 100-fold return, much less, but especially above and beyond all that we can expect or think, because the power isn't working in us. We're being obedient, but there's the power of willingness. I have to be willing. Bring forth. It says to bring forth fruit, and brings forth fruit. Some 30, some 60, some 100. Bring forth in the Greek here when it concerns bringing forth fruit. In other words, bring forth here when it's associated with the word fruit in the Greek means to be fertile, literally or figuratively. To be bear, bring forth, and fruitful, full of fruit. To be fertile. Would you like to be fertile? I'm fertile, Terry. That was really uncalled for, Pete, wasn't it? Well, you know what I mean. I'm talking about the Word. And only the Word. I'm fertile. How come? Because I'm not just sowing seed if I'm the sower. I'm just not receiving seed if I'm the receiver. But anything that has to do with the seed sown is seed received, and it's received or admitted with approval. Now, how's that work when I give? I am causing, where I'm doing the giving, to receive or admitting it with my approval. Do you think the seed sower? What would you think if I got up here on Sunday and I said, you know, I'm going to preach you the uncompromised Word of God, and I really don't want to? You know, I'd rather be fishing. I have to make myself do this every Sunday. I tell you, well, I'm really getting tired of it. Let's open our Bibles this morning. You know, we got a magazine in the mail today. Never had this magazine before. I left it back there, so I wanted to see Terry's disapproval of it as he looks through it, if he'll even willing to look through it. There was a full-page ad for pastors. If you're so busy, I'm going to give you the essence of it. If you're so busy, and it does say like with hospital visits and other things that have to do with the church, you don't have time to spend a lot of time trying to get a message for Sunday. That's what it says. And with our tools that you can buy, we will. I think Jason just walked over to the magazine, or he's looking for it. I know. Anyway, with our tools, you will be able to spend more time doing ministry than trying to get a message for Sunday. And they promise that you'll be able to get series of messages out of it. And you can plan them in advance. Say, that's one thing about a series. You know, when you know it's a series, God has kind of given you at least like a broad layout. And with me, I don't know where it's going to go, and it never goes where I think it might go, but it goes. And it's a series. Why? Well, because I wasn't done the first Sunday. You see. But here, this tool is going to let you do this. Doesn't sound like good seed or good ground. To me, that's the pastor sitting there going, I got absolutely nothing to say, but to keep these folks coming, I better come up with something. But brother, this is good seed. See, they don't talk about seed that way. They talk about keeping the church open, and we need help. We need this and we need that. Well, we're talking about seed. We're talking about the seed being the sower and the ground. And what the ground or you do with the seed determines whether the seed you heard was scattered or planted. Do you want the seed? Do you want the word planted in your life? Most Christians seem to, not most, I don't know, but a lot of Christians I see these days, that if they get any seed, They decide whether they like the crop that the seed, in other words, I don't know if I like that seed or not. I'm not sure I want it to grow. And then they get into a feel-good type of religion and a feel-good type of gospel, a feel-good message. It's good seed if I feel good. But your feelings aren't the ground that we need to sow in. How come? Feelings are here today and gone tomorrow. Pete, I've got a good feeling about this church. I've heard that. I know that feelings are fickle. They never came back. See? It's good ground. We're going to take it up here next time. And we're going to start talking about Jesus switching over now from scattering seed to specifically planting seed. But right now we're going to receive our morning offering.